Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Just One More Level podcast. I am your co-host, Christian.
And I'm your co-host, John.
And this week we have played, I did it right this time, we have
There you
played Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy. To be specific, we only did the first one to
Yes.
start with. We most likely will be doing the other ones at some point, but we wanted to focus on just kind of one at a time. To be honest, we did consider covering all three. John specifically did bring that up, but just time constraints and things like that, I wasn't able to do it this time around. It would have kind of made sense, though. Whenever you brought it up to me, I did think a lot about it there, John.
Right.
With it being a pack of 3 games, I
Yeah.
did spend some time thinking about it. Like, it probably would be a really good idea to spend, an hour on all 3 games. Just time
Right.
constraints and things like that. The past week or so has been crazy. But don't worry, we will return to them eventually. But,
All right.
John, how'd you like it? Did you have some fun with Crash 1 here?
Oh, I had tons of fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been a longtime fan. I had played the original game a whole bunch when I was a kid, and it was always the perfect blend of like fun and challenge. It has this addictive gameplay to it, where as far as just one more level goes, that's what it begs you to do.
Oh,
It
yeah,
begs you to
definitely.
play. Just try one more time. Just play one more level and try to perfect it a little bit, because even before you hit the first boss, it starts to have a bit of a difficulty curve. Not too much, not something unmanageable, but something that makes you think about what you're doing.
Right.
And I actually saw a really interesting video this week. It was sort of a short documentary type thing on YouTube about the making of Crash Bandicoot, the first game. And it was one of the guys from Naughty Dog. He was talking about the development of this game, because previously it was just 2 guys. The only thing they'd ever worked on before was a fighting game for the 3DO. And Universal flew them out to California to work on this new game, this new pitch that they were doing. And they decided that they wanted to develop it for the PlayStation for various reasons. And he went through a lot of intricate detail and a lot of technical terms that I won't pretend to understand. But basically, what he said was he hacked the PlayStation and designed this game in a very unique and specific way to utilize as much memory as possible. Because Crash, especially on the original PlayStation, and he looks great now, but especially back then, he looked great.
Real mascot type character for the PlayStation, and
Right.
I'm sure that's part of the reason why is because it just came, like you said, visually he was just very striking, especially
Yes.
in 19 whatever, whenever it came out,
95, 96, I think.
roughly. Yeah.
And he looked very clean. He looked like a really clean cartoon character with a lot of dynamic movement. The movement on the PlayStation, as you saw last week with Resident Evil and the week before with Silent Hill, it was very stiff. There wasn't a lot you could do with those old polygonal figures when you're trying to go for realism. But since they were going for cartoon, they were able to not use bones in the rendering of the figure, but they only rendered the vertices of his movements. And they were able to do. He explained it all. It's so much better if you want to look it up on YouTube, folks. It's War Stories, I think. Crash Bandicoot. I forget the channel name, but we'll link it somewhere.
We'll figure it
But
out.
he talked about basically it sounded kind of Minecrafty. He said he used chunk loading. So they soaked up all this memory on the disk, and
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
instead of loading an entire level onto the RAM and trying to figure out how to put an entire level on 2 megabytes of RAM like other games at the time did, they only loaded onto the RAM what was necessary for that point in time.
Sure.
And it was
okay.
it was very dynamic, but
That helps explain a lot of the level design too, because they have the big hills that completely block the farther points in the level, and sharp turns that block off everything that you could see. So that kind of makes sense for the level design aspect of it too, why they did it the way they did it. Because those big hills and turns give them an opportunity to unload everything behind and start loading everything in front.
Right, and I digress from all of this technobabble to say what was very striking for me about why he did all of this technical wizardry on the game was not to have the most visually striking game. It wasn't to reach some sort of milestone with technology development. It was to make the game fun. That's what he kept talking about. He said, I need this. The thing that's fun about 2D action platformers, and he referenced Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, of
the
course,
thing that's fun about that is how action-packed and fast-paced it is. And that part, that comes into how addicting it can be. It's fast-paced and it's action-packed and it's rewarding when you're playing these types of games. So, he needed to make that happen in a 3D world because it had never been done before. So he wanted to do all of this technological strain on himself and his team to make the game fun. And it still translates even to this day. The gameplay is almost identical at the basic form.
Right.
They've added
there's
a lot
tiny
to
differences and things.
Oh, yeah. I know they had to rebuild the game, of course, from the ground up for the modern graphics, but to have that same core gameplay element that I've loved for my entire life and then bring it into this modern world where now it looks visually stunning, it's just a great experience.
So I honestly admit, it sounds like you've had a long history with this game. I'm actually fairly new to Crash Bandicoot. I have played a tiny bit when I was a child, but we never owned the game as far as I'm aware when I was a child. So this is my first time actually sitting down and playing through it proper at all. And I mean, I only played about an hour for the podcast, but still, like I said, it's my first time like from the beginning, right? Because before I was always playing on like somebody else's save or just hopping into the game while talking to a friend or something like that. And I don't know if it has to do with the remake or I don't know if they were problems in the original. So don't get me wrong, I did really enjoy the game, but I actually did have some little gripes about the game. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, that's fair.
Some of it just has to do with old school platformers, right? Things with like some enemy placement was a little like, really, did you have to put them there? You know, where it's gonna knock you right into a bottomless pit if you jump a little bit wrong.
Yeah.
Some of the jumps were just needlessly tight, and it's something that you hear a lot about if you watch a lot of people in the Super Mario community that do like Kaizo hacks and things specifically. There's hard, and then there's fun hard. Right. And there's a difference between the two, whereas like hard is just making things so tight that just a tiny little bit of imprecision will get you killed, or where you can't see what you're jumping onto, so you have to just kind of have knowledge checks is kind of what they call it, things like that. Whereas fun hard is a challenge, like a really tight jump, but with a safety net or a backup or something like that. It's good to have risk, but it's not good to be unfair almost. And I feel like quite a bit of times in this game, the jumps were too tight, where if you jump just a tiny bit too early, then you die. Specifically, one of the ones that comes to mind is in like the 6th, 7th-ish level, something like that, maybe a little bit later. There are spikes that like come up from the ground or down from the top. And there's also slopes that are covered in like a moss. And you slide down the moss more quickly, but have trouble going up the moss. So there's two ramps with covered in moss going down, one coming down and one going up on the other side, and then two of those spike traps coming up from the center, just to kind of set the scene for you there. So you run down the one, and you have to time it so that you can miss both the spike traps that are coming up, and then jump to the other side. But as soon as you hit a moss-covered platform, you slide back a tiny bit. And since you're jumping over two spikes, the jump's already fairly tight. So I died a couple times just because I made the jump, but as soon as I hit that platform, I slid back a tiny bit and touched the spike, and then that's just death. Which I was like, that's a little cheap. And then another thing, right in like the first few levels, I was watching the video on Twitch is what made me think about it. There's a bunch of rolling, I don't even know what they are, just rolling discs like back and forth that you have to dodge. And it's insta-death if you're hit by one, which makes sense if you were crushed by one or whatever. But if you just touch the front of one, like not even get crushed by it, but if you touch it at all, it's insta-death, which now that I know that, it's not that big of a deal, but it did annoy me a couple times. So it's just little things like that. Like and like I said, a lot of that has to do with old school game design. That's just how they did a lot of platformers back then, was to make things, except for Mario. Mario had the perfect mix of difficulty and fun, in my opinion. Other than that, one other gripe that I had, and I mean, everybody at this point should know by now, I get mad about little technical things a lot of times. This game, the PC port's not bad. I did try it with both keyboard and mouse, as well as with controller. Works fine with both, in my opinion.
What are you doing?
Honestly, it worked fine with the keyboard, in my opinion, until it got to the point to where you actually had to start holding space to do like longer jumps. That's kind of hard to do, in my opinion. I just don't have the coordination, the practice to play platformers with a keyboard for that. But that was the only thing that I found that was really frustrating at all. Because otherwise, it was just space to jump, WASD to move, and then you use the mouse to spin. So it was pretty bog standard stuff.
That's not bad.
Yeah, exactly. But they lock the frame rate to either 24 or 48 frames per second.
Okay.
Which is just gross in a video game standpoint. 24 is pretty standard for like movies and television shows and things like that. 48 isn't unheard of. I believe that's the frame rate that The Hobbit was shot in, even though a lot of people complained about that. But in a video, why? Give me 60 at least. Like, I loved it. The higher frame rate in The Hobbit, I thought it looked much more crisp and clean. I would prefer everything shot like that. I hate motion blur in video games. If there's motion blur on to give you a more, like, cinematic feel, I instantly turn it off. Disgusting. Disgusting.
That's the thing. In a video game, I don't want motion. I don't want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want. Yeah. I want crisp, clean graphics. But when it comes to a movie, it depends. What kind of movie am I watching here? And the only reason I didn't like it in The Hobbit was because I was such a big fan of The Lord of the Rings and how those movies look.
Sure.
And the types of things that they did to achieve the graphics that they did were incredible. Like, it was like true art to achieve some of the things that they were able to do in the early 2000s for the Lord of the Rings movies. And then for this movie, for The Hobbit, they just threw it all out the window.
And I will concede, while I think The Hobbit, like all of the CG work and everything looked much better in The Hobbit, there are things they did much better in Lord of the Rings, going on a little bit of a sidetrack here. But for instance, the way that they showed the size of the hobbits compared to everybody else was done much better. Much better in The Lord of the Rings than it was in The Hobbit. And that was without a bunch of CG and whatnot, mostly just practical like camera shots and whatnot. So I do concede to a certain degree with that, but the
I think
the frame rate for me had no effect, right?
Okay.
Like what difference did having a lower frame rate do for the practical effects, really?
No,
so,
and that could have looked fine. I think it was a mix of both that really got me. The frame rate thing wasn't too bad. I felt that in some of the moments, because it was in 3D when it came out, and that's how I saw it in the theater, was in 3D. Some of the moments were a little nauseating, I think, when they went down into like the goblin
I
lair.
never watched the 3D version, so
it got a little nauseating just because the camera moving around so much. So I guess I don't take fault with the technical aspect of shooting a movie in 48 FPS. It's the certain things that they did when they
with that specific movie, but back to video games.
Movie, back to Crash Bandicoot.
It just makes no sense for a video game, and I think that's something we both agree on there. The video games, the more control you have, the higher FPS, the more control you have, the more feedback you get, and generally speaking, just the more fluid the game plays. There's no reason that I know of for it to be locked to 48 or 24 FPS. Maybe they were trying to keep... I think the only thing I can think of is that the original game probably ran at a sub 30 FPS because of the limitations of the PlayStation. So they were trying to keep that kind of feel of it.
Right.
But you can... we have the technology these days to make animations look like whatever you want them to look like, regardless of the FPS that it's playing at. So I don't get why. So from a technical standpoint, I was kind of irritated with that. With platformers especially, you want as much precision and control as possible. Yes. Especially when there's tight jumps and insta-death pits and things like that. So, but level design, you kind of touched on that a little bit when you were talking about the documentary. I do agree the level design for the most part is fantastic. My only gripe is with the camera angle, like in the rolling ball section, for instance. The camera angle doesn't give you very much vision behind what's normally behind the character. But in this game, about 4 levels in or whatever, there's a giant ball, Indiana Jones style, rolling down a hill, gonna kill you. And so you're running the opposite direction of what you normally would, towards the camera instead of away from it. And the camera angle doesn't really lend itself well to going backwards in a level or towards the camera in general. So that was a little iffy to me. And then this game seems to love to hide things kind of off screen because it is a fixed camera angle game, and the camera angle is kind of like down at a 45-ish degree angle behind the behind Crash here. And just sometimes there are boxes and things that you just can't see. So without like playing the game repeatedly to just know where they're at, it's kind of like It's a thing. Now I do believe I've watched a little bit of videos on this game before previously, specifically like the remake versus the original, and I believe they actually changed the camera angle a tiny bit. I could be mistaken, but yeah, so from what I've heard, it was actually a little bit better in the original. This is just kind of specific to the remake, the gripe about the camera.
It was the update to a 16:9 aspect ratio.
Sure.
It was the way that it was cropped to translate it into a 16:9. They lost a little bit of verticality when they cropped it,
which I think would have helped a lot if they kept the verticality of the camera. I mean,
I agree. I actually had the original running beside me because my CRT is beside my PC setup here. And my wife and my nephew were playing the original game
while you were playing the
while I was
remake
playing the remake. Yeah. So it was kind of fun to have that real time compare contrast.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, but coming from a place, if I may counteract a few of those points, coming from a place of having played the original so much and generally being a fan of these Naughty Dog platformers, I'm a huge fan of Jak and Daxter.
Same there.
I'm a huge 100%. Fan of Jak and Daxter. I've always loved the Crash Bandicoot games, and I had a PlayStation instead of an N64. So while everybody else was loading up on Mario 64 and Mario Party and all that kind of stuff, I had Crash Bandicoot and Crash Bash and well, I didn't have Crash Bash. I actually just recently discovered Crash Bash.
Oh, really?
Which was the first. It was the first. My wife played it. My wife had it growing up, and she introduced me to it, and I think it's very fun for a clone. Because it's not
like a Super Mario or Mario Party, style.
Yeah, it's not a straight up clone, but it was the PlayStation's
in
answer
the same
to,
vein. Yeah, sure.
Mario Party, and I think it's actually really really fun. And I think that given their limitations, I don't know if this guy was just saying that, he was one of the first, but the way he made it sound was he made the world's first 3D action platformer. And
I don't think so, but
I can't verify that. But he said that similar type games that were made before, he was talking about like what you said with the camera angle and Crash running towards the camera during that boulder segment instead of away from it. He said that type of thing had never been done in an action platforming game.
That much I could see being true.
Fixing the camera angle and forcing you to do different things, because he said he didn't want you seeing the character's back of the head the whole time. He wanted a little more versatility, which is why he has the climbing levels where you have to climb up some kind of structure, so it's more 2D. And the levels where you're running towards the camera. There's a level with you're stuck
really,
on the
this game makes me think almost exactly of Castlevania, right? Because you have a side-on camera angle,
right? And you're climbing through some kind of structure.
Exactly. Yeah. Getting to the top
totally
while fighting enemies, and you can't fall down those pits. All right.
No, those are insta-death pits. Yeah.
Yep. That's Castlevania.
No, I see where you're coming from. Totally. Yeah. Except the bosses in this game are very easy. Except
very
Ripperoo. No.
Yeah,
I
only fought one. In my time. Papu. But this was the easiest thing in the world. Like...
What you're saying then is your opinion is invalid. Listen, this guy, if you want to look up a walkthrough or if you just want to pop down and play a little bit more, Ripperoo is the second boss.
Yeah.
And it's garbage, okay? It's not like Papu Papu, okay? Papu Papu is a classic kind of boss, memorizes animation, then hit him and,
It's even easier than that, though. So Papu Papu is, first off, design, amazing. The level design looks great. He looks great. Well, honestly, and that's this whole game. Everything looks amazing in this game. The animations are beautiful. The world is beautiful. The characters, the enemies, all of it. 100%, not a single complaint in my book for how everything looks. It looks fantastic. But anyways, Papu Papu, though, even worse than like classical bosses in my opinion, because so it's a guy who stands in the middle. He's a larger guy, and so your spin attacks don't work on him. And he has this big like stick with a thing on the end of it, and he slams it down on the ground and then starts spinning around in a circle with it like extended out in front of him. So to damage him, whenever he slams it on the ground and starts spinning, you just jump on him. He doesn't even actually swing it at you. He just whichever direction he's facing is the direction he swings it, and then he starts spinning around. If he at least like locked onto you first and tried to hit you with it, I think it would have been so much better. But instead, once I figured out how to damage him, it was the easiest thing in the world, because as soon as he swung hit the thing down, I just jumped on him. And then I would go behind him, and then he would recover and stand up, and he wouldn't face me or anything. He would just, whichever direction he got up facing, he would swing it back down again and then start spinning. So there was literally no challenge at all. Like, it was the easiest thing in the world.
Oh yeah, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Papu Papu was notorious in the gaming world for being one of the easiest, weirdest bosses, of all time. But
I can see
Ripperoo, it's like a puzzle. You're standing in a fixed grid. There's 9 platforms for you to jump on. Coming down from a waterfall is boxes of TNT. Okay.
Oh,
and
cool,
you can prime the TNT. To either set in place, or if you hit it just right, you can prime the TNT before it starts to float away again, and it'll float down and explode somewhere further down. And the whole time this is going on, the boss is hopping between the platforms, and he has 3 distinct patterns. He'll hop in like from bottom left, center to bottom right, back to center, and then he'll hop in like a diamond, and then he'll hop in another pattern. And what you need to do is memorize the pattern and then get the TNT to detonate near one of the platforms that he's going to jump on. Which sounds easy in theory, but it's
in practice
incredibly difficult.
Yeah, sure.
As a kid, I never made it past Ripperoo.
Really? Okay.
Never. Nope. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I could never make it past that boss. So my purpose for this one wasn't to play it just for an hour, but I wanted to see some new stuff.
That's
I
fair.
wanted to I wanted to get past where I always fell. And I made it to the kind of the second world. The first world has this this tribal jungle type of theme going on, which reoccurs. And the vertical levels are like wooden. You're climbing up some kind of wooden gate or wooden structure. And then further in the level, you're in like temple ruins. There's levels where it's like dark. You're inside of a temple and you move kind of like in a grid. And then there's levels where it's vertical again. You're climbing something, both going laterally and climbing in a 2D space. But it's like jungle temple.
And by climbing,
ruins.
he doesn't mean like literally climbing a ladder or anything like that. He just means the main theme of the level is moving upwards. Right, jumping up platforms, jumping up. They have like boxes that can make you jump super high, using those in a chain to kind of go up higher and higher. Yeah, not literally like just climbing a ladder or anything like that. It's much more interesting.
But I came across the infamous bridge stage, which I had heard of in Legend before, but I had never played, and it is ridiculous.
See, I didn't make it that far, so
difficult.
Enlighten me.
I had about 10 lives. Okay, the level is it's set up just like some of the early levels. You know what I mean? You're walking forward, and you're dealing with obstacles as you move forward. But it's a rickety bridge, so there's missing pieces, right? You have to jump to stand on these things, but they're literally like one board across. These platforms that you have to make it on. And there's regular platforms, there's platforms that fall if you stand on them too long, and then there's broken platforms that you can't land on at all. And on top of that, there's the wild hogs make a reappearance.
Oh, okay, cool.
But you don't ride it, they charge you, and you can't attack it.
Oh,
there's nothing you can do. No, there's nothing you can do to defend against it unless you have unless you have an Aku mask, which is this game's
star power.
Heart. Yeah, star power, and it also
and heart
offers
system at the same time.
Yeah, you can take extra hits if you have whatever level of the Aku mask. There's 3 levels to it. You have the regular or the golden, and then when you get the third one, you get to put it on, and you have the star power. But yeah, unless you have an Aku mask and you're able to take a hit without dying, you have to avoid it somehow. You have to wait for it to charge you, and then like jump over into the right a bit to land on the platform behind it in order to make it through the level, and it's awful. I played that level probably, I'd say conservatively, maybe 30 to 40 times.
Really? Okay.
Before I beat it. Yeah, but I couldn't stop. I was like, no, I can't. I have to beat this level.
I will say that is one thing they do really well. I think they realized when they were designing the game how difficult some of the sections were, like how difficult some of the jumps and things were, because they give you a lot of lives in this game. Lives are just everywhere, which I mean I'm glad about because I died a fair amount in my 1 hour playthrough. So very thankful for that. And it does add some more benefit to the game as well because it's a very collector heavy. It's not quite what I would call a collectathon, right? It's not like the 3D Donkey Kong game, Donkey Kong 64 I think it was called. It's not like Banjo-Kazooie or another game that we're going to be playing in a couple weeks, Yooka-Laylee. It's not like any of those games where the main theme is collecting. But they still added a lot of stuff to collect, which I find fun. It's nice to have things like that to do, little side things that aren't necessary for finishing the game, but adds more to do for the people who really enjoy it, who wanna
I think
master the game.
I think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater actually had a really good balance between being a collectathon and developing skill.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Because you there were certain things that you weren't able to unlock and complete unless you got all the letters on every level, unless you found the secret tapes, unless you got the point multipliers, different things like that.
Spider-Man, anybody?
Yeah, exactly. The old Spider-Man games, and
Spider-Man was an unlockable character in Tony Hawk 2. I want to say.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But I thought you were talking about the Spider-Man games on the PS1 because they were like that too.
Specifically for me, it was Spider-Man on the PS2 that really did it. I think it was Spider-Man 2 on the PS2 that was just, oh my god, fantastic game.
That was the good one, that you could actually web on buildings. Before that, the first Spider-Man movie game on the PS2 and the 2 cartoon Spider-Man games on the PS1, you just webbed at the sky.
Right, yeah. And then Spider-Man 3, they completely ruined it. It was like they released it for PS2 and 3 because it was coming out right around the time that the PS3 was coming out. And maybe the PS3 version was better, I don't know, but we only had a PS2 at the time. It was so bad. It was so bad. I was so disappointed.
Yeah, I've only played a little bit of them, but I played the PS1 Spider-Man a whole bunch growing up. That was my game. But anyway, back to Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, Crash. The game we're playing this week.
The game we're actually playing, So I want to talk a little bit about the difficulty a bit more, and something that I found very, very interesting and very, very helpful. And I didn't realize it was a thing until I Googled it. I thought I was going crazy, actually. The game has something called dynamic difficulty.
Really? Okay. So I know what dynamic difficulty is, but how does this game do dynamic difficulty?
I was playing the game and I kept dying in one spot, specifically on this level. I think actually what we're watching here, the second vertical level where you're moving upwards.
And this is the level that I specifically was complaining about as well earlier.
I kept dying. Yeah, I kept dying in one spot over and over again. And then, when I went through it again, one of the boxes that I broke was a checkpoint. And I was like, has that always been there? Or is the game taking it easy on me this time? And I Googled it, and the game was, in fact, taking it easy on me this time.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Apparently, it was a concept that they introduced all the way back in Crash Bandicoot 2 on the PlayStation.
Oh, and then retroactively fit to Crash 1 in the trilogy?
They retroactively put it in Crash 1 when they redid it, So for anybody that doesn't know, if you die more than once in a particular spot, they will start making the cubes, the crates that you break, a little bit more giving. They'll put an Aku mask in there, or they'll put more fruit in there. If you die enough times on a single spot, they will start the level by giving you an Aku mask. You won't even have to
that's
find
good,
it.
in my opinion, honestly, because Crash especially was made for. I mean, it was made during that era of the PlayStation where they wanted to be the ones with attitude compared to the Nintendo with their family-friendly vision and whatnot. But it was still made to be a very family-friendly game. I mean, Crash, sure, he's a character with attitude or whatever, but they're not, going around cursing at each other and smoking cigars or anything like that, right? Like, it's still a very family-friendly game. So, children or, I mean, as you were just discussing, me and you both have had problems with this as adults even, and since there's no classic difficulty slider, I think that's an excellent solution to the difficulty, right? Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I know there are other games that do that sort of thing as well now, but I imagine at that time that was probably a pretty big deal whenever Crash 2 came out. Because I can't imagine there were a whole lot of PlayStation 1 games that did that sort of thing.
I don't believe so. It was the first time I'd ever heard of it. Right. Because I'm not that... I don't play the games that often. I haven't played that many different varieties of them, so this was the first time I had ever heard of it. And like I said, I thought I was going crazy. Yeah. And I was like, is the game like taking it easy on me or something? Did I unlock some kind of glitch? And, the game actually was taking it easy on me. That's and it even goes up. Okay. It even goes up from there. If you die, I forget how many times. I think it's like 20 times. They'll start you out with a golden Aku mask, so you can take.
Oh, really?
Hits.
Just straight? Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and and they will add more checkpoints, and apparently that's how many times I had died on that one part.
Right.
I needed more checkpoints in the level. I know I got it on the bridge level for sure. Yeah. I had checkpoints between every segment of the bridge. But
oh, nice.
It was great. And the continue system also is extremely forgiving. If you die all the way down to a game over, it'll say game over on the screen, and then it'll have an option for you to just retry the level. So
that's excellent.
You start at the same level. You don't have to regress a couple levels or
the
start of the world or anything.
Really, is what you're saying.
All you lose is your checkpoint, and your lives.
Well, yeah, of course.
You start back out with 4 lives, 5 if you count live 0. This game is a live 0 game. But everything else for it is amazing for me.
Yeah. I have just one more little thing that I would like to say before we wrap up. Some of the hitboxes are a little weird sometimes. With the turtle enemies specifically, again, watching the video is what reminded me of it. I don't feel like I was anywhere close to a turtle one time. So turtles are enemies that you can either bounce on and they'll flip on their back and then you can use them to jump off of, or you can just spin them away, kill them like normal. I came up on the rear end of a turtle and I just died instantly. It was just GG, game over, you're dead. And I don't feel like I touched it at all. And then another thing, maybe I just didn't know this, possibly. Maybe it is how it's supposed to work. But there's monkey enemies that spin kind of like how Sonic does, right?
Yes.
And I had never had any problem with them.
Platform.
Yeah, I had never had a problem with them. I just kind of, spun them or jumped on them and then moved on with my life. But there was one time where I went to jump on one and I died. And it was rolling in its ball form. I'm assuming you just can't jump on them when they're in the ball form.
You can't, no.
But yeah, I had no idea. So the one time that happened, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cheap. Like, I just had no idea. But now that I know, I mean, it's not a big deal. But there are a couple other things like that, just with the hitboxes. There was one time where there were a bunch of fruit or apples or whatever you want to call them. And there was like 3 of them bunched together. And I was jumping like right on top of them, trying to pick them up. And for whatever reason, I just could not collect them. No matter what I did, the fruit just did not collect. And so, I mean, I ended up giving up on it because the fruit, the only thing it does is give you lives if you collect 100. So it's not a huge deal. It was just like, why will it not let me pick it up? So the remake here does have some small bugs, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Nothing that really ruins the game or anything like that, but it is just slightly annoying at times. Yeah. But again, that's remake specific. We'll cover the original eventually, and
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as to whether or not I would play this just one more level, I for this I 30% of the game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Just for this playthrough here, I'm seeing you on stream here. You're coming up to that part you were talking about. I also died here quite a lot. I'm pretty sure this is the first time I actually noticed the dynamic difficulty.
I probably got pretty close to it, or just didn't realize whenever it had started happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right here specifically, if you're watching the YouTube video, well, the YouTube video will be a little bit different. But if you're watching on stream, right here is
right
the
there.
platform I was talking about earlier. But
That
really,
was
just
cheap.
this whole section is kind of what my gripe was about.
Yeah, I noticed what you were talking about there. I don't think you should have taken damage from that spike. That was that hitbox thing you were talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes they're just a little bit off. But again, the game is still more than worth playing. I agree with John as far as whether or not I'd play this just one more level. For sure. I definitely want to go back, beat this game. And like I said, at some point I would like to return to cover the entire trilogy. That's probably how we'll do it next time, is cover the entire trilogy instead of just doing number 2 and then number 3. So for sure, just one more level. Yes, yes. Highly recommend. Possibly the original over the remake, but the remake's certainly easier to get into and looks fantastic.
Yes, and it's much more accessible these days as well. I don't think it's expensive to get a copy on the original PlayStation, but for newer gamers, you know, if you've been keeping up and you're gaming on a Switch or you're gaming on a PS4 or a PC or something like that, you know, you have to shell out the cash to get yourself an original PlayStation and find out how to hook it up to your modern TV and then find a copy of the game and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that this is out there, this and the Spyro Reignited trilogy.
Yes, that one, that's another one I want to cover at some point, but I will say that one, I think I had no gripes about that one compared to the original, whereas this one, I haven't actually played enough of the original to have a hard opinion on it, but I feel like I would have enjoyed the original better of this one, though.
See, I was a PlayStation kid, the original PlayStation. I had Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, I had Frogger, I had a lot of the classic PS1 titles that people look back on fondly. I didn't have a lot of the more mature titles, like your Resident Evils and Silent Hill, but I had a lot of the family-friendly titles back in the day for the PlayStation. So I actually, you know what? I don't think I had. No, I didn't own Crash Bandicoot. I had the rest of those, but my friend owned Crash Bandicoot, actually.
So you just ended up playing it a lot with him?
I went over and played it all the time with him, yeah. This and Twisted Metal 2 and other PlayStation classics like that is what I ended up doing there.
See, we were mostly Nintendo, like, growing up, and then once I got to, like, my preteen, teenage stage, it was pretty much Sony at that point, PS2, PS1, PS3 once it came out. Although I had the GameCube, and I absolutely adored the GameCube as well.
Oh, yeah. But that's the biggest regret of my life right there. I'm just going to spell that out. I'm not saying that I would regret getting a GameCube, nor that the GameCube had bad games or anything like that. But I was given the option once. My dad was in the store, and he said, "You told me to come and get you the Nintendo Wii, but they don't have it. They have the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, or the GameCube." And I said, I want the GameCube. Yeah, because I wanted a Nintendo console again. I had the Super Nintendo when I was a kid, and I was like, all right, Lord. anything Nintendo.
I mean, excellent choice in console, but not compared to the other
Not compared to the other two? No. Yes. I could have been playing Blu-ray discs.
Exactly.
Back in 2007. Are you kidding me? But no. Yeah, I went with the GameCube. Oh, for goodness sake. That was,
Lord.
Lord. Yeah, and then I ended up selling that GameCube to GameStop for $35.
I believe it.
It was the GameCube. Oh, the GameCube, 2 controllers, 2 memory cards, and 4 games. I had Super Mario Sunshine, I had Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, I had Lego Star Wars, and I had Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Excellent games, though.
Excellent game library, yeah. But for all 4 of those games and the console, they gave me $35.
All right. Yeah. So let's wrap it up here. Any final thoughts? I think I pretty much said everything I wanted to say.
The only thing, if I had to make any gripe, I think I've made it known that I adore the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Yeah. I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, I quite enjoy the original. I look forward to reviewing that in the future. Any excuse I get to play Crash is a great day.
Right.
But if I had to make any gripe, I have no idea what's going on with the story.
Oh yeah, I mean they added like the cutscene in the beginning, which I don't know if they had in the original or not. But
they did. It looked
the
worse,
only thing that
it
really tells you is that you are a Bandicoot that was being experimented on by a unnamed, as far as I know. I mean he's
Cortex.
named, but unnamed in the cutscene. I mean,
They say his name. I think
do they?
maybe not in the original, but in this one, yeah, they say his name's Cortex.
Okay. Well, anyways, yeah. So you're a bandicoot that's being experimented on, and apparently there are others also.
Yeah, you see a glimpse of your girlfriend both in game and in that cutscene.
Right.
In the you see your girlfriend at the end of the bonus stages. She's your she's your driving force. You want to get to the end to see your girlfriend. To save your girlfriend, yeah.
Classic
and then
Mario
Cortex,
story here.
Right, Cortex comes in and swoops her away right at the last second there. And the here's the cutscene here.
The video restarted. We
restarted
broke
there.
the 45-minute mark there, so
we did.
The video restarted. Or got close to it, I guess. Not quite 45.
I mean, there may be more story towards the end of the game. You may get a little bit more from Cortex and his minions to figure out what's going on. Why is he experimenting on the bandicoots? What is a bandicoot?
Right. And I just noticed in the cutscene there's actually a bunch of other creatures there, too.
Yes, they all
that
make
you
appearances.
Seem to be experimenting on.
Yeah, they all make appearances in Crash Bash.
Oh, okay. Cool.
They're all playable characters or enemy characters. I don't know how they factor in. Crash Bash was made, I think, right around 2000. So it was after all 3 of the games had come out for the PlayStation. So they had a lot of things to build on. Like I said, I don't know how the story gets fleshed out throughout the rest of Crash Bandicoot. This is the farthest I've ever made it in the game for how much I played it.
Right.
And I've never played the sequels. I never had the second and third one. So I don't know how this ends up developing. But yeah. I mean, and for what it is, it's an action platformer. You don't need that much of a story.
You really don't.
That's not why you're playing the game.
Yeah.
You're playing the game for the challenge and for making your way through the level and collecting all your little fruit and crates and things. But it's I've always been curious. What am I doing? Why am I on this beach?
Well, I mean, and Crash 4 just came out, so maybe there will be more story in that game as well.
I love the pun for that too. It's about time. It's about time we had. Yeah, both. It's about time we've had a Crash Bandicoot 4 and
a proper
literally
one.
A proper
because
Crash
there
Bandicoot
was
4.
Crash.
Yeah.
There was a 4th Crash Bandicoot made. In fact, I think there was a 5th Crash Bandicoot game made. But they were heavily panned by most fans of the series.
I
don't.
And they weren't.
Japan,
they weren't called.
I feel
Crash
bad
Bandicoot
for the Japanese audience because in Japan it was, Crash 4. And then whenever they released Crash 4, It's About Time, they also called it Crash 4. So I feel a little bad for the Japanese audience. That's got to be a bit confusing for them. But
no, I don't. They they completely screwed us over on the Mario title, so I don't want to hear it.
I don't even want to hear it with Mario. Final Fantasy is where they screwed us over.
Yeah.
2, 3, and I think 4. All of those were just did not exist, and so they called Final Fantasy. 2 was actually like Final Fantasy 4 or 5 or whatever, and then and nowadays, when you search for Final Fantasy 2, you have no idea what's gonna come up. Is this the Japanese Final Fantasy 2? Is this the English? Oh my god!
And if we're talking like indie movies from other countries as far as being released in America, it's awful. There's I forget what it is, but there's an Italian-made movie saga called Zombie, and for some reason when George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, either Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead, one of those, released over there, they called it Zombie.
Yeah.
Over in either Italy or Japan. So when they wanted to make the Italian movies in America, they couldn't release Zombie 2 in America with the name Zombie.
Right.
Because of the Dawn of the Dead movie, so they instead of calling it Zombie 2, they called it Zombie in the U.S. So Zombie 2 over there was Zombie in the U.S.
Perfect.
And their Zombie 2, they eventually gave up and they just started doing it for parody.
Right.
But it's
quite confusing.
It's been happening like that for a long time. I feel like the modern age is probably the best age to live in as far as consuming parody across the continents and consuming foreign material and things like that. Yeah, it's much better. But so anyway, Crash Bandicoot.
So yeah, I mean, we are pretty much over time at this point, but let's not forget Jon. Where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitch at The Dorseman. You can also find me on YouTube at The Dorseman. I just started uploading again. I'm going to be uploading some of my Twitch streams as some Twitch highlights and different things like that. So you don't want to miss that. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm just John Dorsey, John Dorsey 1 on Twitter. And that's pretty much it for me. Christian, where can we find you?
Yeah, I also have the Twitter. I am Stream the Steam at Stream the Steam on Twitter. YouTube is pretty much just VODs of stuff on Twitch. So if you want to catch it live and interact, I suggest Twitch. But you can find me at both of those platforms. Stream all the Steam. So come check it out sometime. I just play a variety of games, as well as, of course, the stuff that we do for the podcast is usually, not always, but usually done on stream and then uploaded sometime after the podcast goes out to the YouTubes. So yeah, check us out.
Check us out. All right. And I'm sorry.
Go ahead, man. No, it's all you. It's all you.
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. You didn't have to, but you did, and we appreciate it.
We do. We appreciate your time and appreciate you being here with us tonight. Bye-bye. Oh, wait. Before I say goodbye, I almost forgot. Next week. Yeah. Oh, my God. Next week. What are we playing?
I forget. I thought we were playing Crash Bandicoot 2.
No, it's Ratchet and Clank next week.
Ratchet and Clank?
Ratchet and Clank next week.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we will. We already have a couple other games scheduled. We actually have Ratchet and Clank scheduled, and then Yooka-Laylee, which is a platformer collectathon scheduled. Right. But we can certainly throw some more Crash Bandicoot in here for John's sake, and for my own sake as well. I wouldn't mind getting a little bit more of the Crash Bandicoot. In.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly when we'll be streaming it, recording it, but Wednesday, November 11th. Look forward to Ratchet and Clank, and then a week later on November 18th, Yooka-Laylee. And last thing, if anybody made it this far in the video or the podcast, give us a holler. Let us know in the comments below or on Twitter or something. We are trying to come up with some Christmas-themed games to do a little Christmas special, and neither myself nor John have any idea of any Christmas games at all. The only thing that I can think of, the only game that comes to mind, is Kingdom Hearts has the a Christmas-themed Nightmare Before Christmas level. And that's it. That's the only thing, and that's not even like in the beginning of the game or anything like that. So it's like, Christian, I don't know. I'm at a loss. What do you got, John?
Christian, I got this. Okay, the Wisdom Tree games.
Oh Lord, and that's honestly, I wasn't thinking specifically Wisdom Tree, but terrible and or just indie games are kind of what I was thinking. But yeah, let us know if you guys have any ideas. Wisdom Tree's a real possibility at this point because I don't have anything better.
That was that was the nerd, the Angry Video Game Nerds, like first 2 Christmas specials he did was all Wisdom Tree games.
Wisdom Tree stuff. Oh Lord,
just because of the Bible theme.
Again, one last time. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We will be back next week.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.